Principal Matters Podcast, episode 312. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're talking about ideas for teacher recruitment and retention with my guests, Kristi, Kirschner, and Danny Massey. Principal Matters listeners, as you know, across the U.S., schools have been responding to teacher shortages. And as most recently as September 1st, 2022, the White House announced recruitment partnerships to address these challenges. Groups like the National Center for Grow have partnered with states including California, Florida, Missouri, North Dakota, Texas, West Virginia, and Wyoming to design apprenticeship programs to help shape policy and provide feedback to the Department of Labor. In Brazosport Independent School District, south of Houston, Texas, education leaders there have launched innovative programs addressing this need as well. And this week, I'm joined by my friends there in Brazosport ISD, Danny Massey, the superintendent, and Kristi Kirschner, Chief Human Resources Officer. Now, normally I do some long introductions to my friends as I'm getting ready to introduce them, but I'm going to have them introduce themselves so you don't have to keep listening to my voice this whole time. So Kristi, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and something else listeners might be surprised to know about you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us, Mr. Parker. My name is Kristi Kirschner. I'm the Chief HR Officer here at Brazosport Independent School District. I'm actually entering in my 9th year in education, in my 5th year with Brazosport ISD. In a past life, I like to say that I started my HR career in industry and manufacturing and oil and gas. But I quickly found my way to where the most amazing product of all is our youth. And so supporting, human capital needs for the school district has been nothing less than exciting and just super rewarding. So thank you for having us.
It's great to have you. Danny Massey, why don't you introduce yourselves to listeners?
Yes, I am the proud superintendent of schools at Brazosport ISD. This is my 33rd year in public education, and it's my 31st year in Brazosport ISD. And so I have had a unique pathway here. I was a teacher and a coach at Brazoswood High School for 13 years. I was an assistant principal for 4 years. I was a principal in our district for another 4 years. And I was an executive director, an assistant superintendent. And now I'm going on my 8th year as superintendent of schools. Again, all right here in Brazosport. I met my wife here in Brazosport. I have 3 kids that have all grown up here and have graduated from our schools here. And so again, it's been a unique and interesting pathway for me, and one that I'm really proud of, to have been in the same location for 31 years.
Well, you should be proud. And I'm just going to give a shout out to those who may want to follow you on social media, because I'm just going to say straight up, Danny Massey, you do it right when it comes to celebrating your teachers and your students. Every time I log in and see something going on there, I'm like, I want to be there. So do you even know what your Twitter handle is off the top of your head? If you don't, I'll put it in the show notes later.
Yes, I do. It is at Danny Massey 44.
At Danny Massey 44. Principal Matters listeners, you've got to check out Danny Massey's Twitter feeds. No pressure now, Danny, but you definitely are doing such a great job of messaging and celebrating the work of your teachers and your principals and your students. I want to begin with some questions about how your district has been working towards this recruitment and retention dilemma that all of us have been facing. And I just want to say on the front end that I know every state is different, but the reason that I reached out to the two of you is because we're friends. And in our correspondence, Danny, you were sharing some of the wonderful things that were happening there. We jumped on a phone call together, and then we jumped on a Zoom with Kristi, and I just took pages of notes, and I was like, there's no way that I can't share this with Principal Matters listeners. So I just want to begin with the question, can you summarize how your district's efforts in teacher recruitment and retention have enhanced your own work in light of teacher shortages? And I don't care who begins, you guys just decide.
Yes, I'll start. And before I start too, I wanted to also say congratulations on your 300th podcast. I'm a regular listener of yours and really benefit a lot professionally from the podcast and enjoy it very much. And I know there a couple months ago, there was a celebration of the 300th podcast and the quality of the podcast to be able to sustain that. And so now that we're 312, we're just really honored for that. And so, yes, I'd love to talk about our teacher retention and recruitment efforts. And really, it started about 5 years ago. The first, what we believe was considered an innovative strategy, was what we called our GHOST organization. And this, most of these strategies started with our board of trustees. We have 7 board members that are responsible for the governance of our district, and they're not educators, they're lay people. And so sometimes it helps us as educators to get out of our own way and think differently. And so we have a board of trustees that really pushes us and supports us to be innovative. And so without a board like that, we would not have been able to do these things. And so the first thing we started up with, and was an idea of one of our board members, is what we call our GHOST organization. And we are able to have positions and hire for professional positions before we have vacancies. And, you know, that doesn't seem that innovative in many other businesses, but in the education business, that's really not done very often. We never did it. And I think most of the school districts in Texas rarely do that. You know, you never even considered posting a vacancy until you had a resignation. And, you know, you had to have the green form, the red form, and the gray form all lined up in sequential order before HR would even consider posting that position and going through a selection process. But as an education organization, we're very different than most other organizations in that we probably do 90% of our professional hiring is in a really short 2-month window, 2.5-month window in June and July. And so it just really didn't make sense the way we were operating for so many decades to wait until you had a vacancy before you considered hiring anybody. So we have 10 extra positions that we carry throughout the year, so we can use to hire people to get ahead of attrition. And then the second strategy we started, again, about 4 years ago, was our Grow Our Own. And we found out we had about 50 paraprofessionals, teacher aides in our district that had an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And they were making about $20,000 a year, which our first year teachers make about 3 times that. And so these were people that were entrenched in our community. They were here, they weren't leaving, and they were very good. They were very good with kids, but for whatever reason, they had not, didn't have a pathway or an opportunity to get a teacher's certification. And so we provided opportunities and helped fund them to get their teaching certification either through a university or an alternative certification, depending on where they were at. And so we called that our Grow Our Own that we started. And then soon after that, we began what we call our paid university interns. And we have a partnership with 5 universities in the state of Texas. And we pay interns to come and either do their internship, a semester or a year-long internship, depending on the university. So we pay them to do that. And then we also have low-cost housing for them, so they can bunk up together. They don't have to pay a fee, and they can share the cost of that, just like in college. And so you mentioned we're south of Houston, but we're way south. We're about 50 miles south of Houston. And so we're not in an area that our closest university is about 50 miles away. And so we rarely had the opportunity to get student interns from universities to come work with us. And so, but the ones we did get, they liked it. people that come down here, they like the area, they like the culture and climate of the school district, they like the campus leadership, and they would stay. And so that became a strategy for us, as if we can get more university interns down here, then we can get more teachers. And we certainly have benefited from that. And so again, we have a partnership with different universities that they send us their interns. We pay them a monthly rate, and we retain over 90% of them stay in the district with us. And then go.
No, that's amazing. Let me pause for just a moment, because Principal Matters listeners already, if you're like me, I hope you're taking notes, because those are such innovative ways to think outside the box. Ghost organization hires, where you have hires before vacancies, growing your own, identifying the people within your own district who may have begun degrees but needed to finish them, and then figuring out how your district can support them in the finishing of those degrees, because suddenly you have someone on the pathway for teachers. And then your paid university interns. You guys have been doing that for a while. And now your newest program, I know you're getting ready to talk about next, which is your apprenticeship program, is just that next level for you.
Yes, I'll let Kristi talk about that. This is the one that's really going to be a difference maker.
Thank you, Danny. So recently we've launched our apprenticeship program, and really with a built-in residency pathway. And so we started this work back in May, had our Department of Labor apprenticeship program approved with our two partners. So Brazosport ISD is actually partnered with a community college who actually has who offers bachelor degrees. And then we welcomed a third party, or a second sponsor, which is Inspire Texas, which is an educator preparation program by Region 4. So through our service center, and they are actually the certifying entity, if you will, for our apprentices. Mm-hmm. And so really what the apprenticeship has done, if you think about the areas that Mr. Massey just talked about, the grow our own, so individuals who already have their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree, the paid internship. So those pieces are still a part of our apprenticeship. I like to think about it as an umbrella, but the apprenticeship program has actually allowed us to go deeper, right? And to seek individuals who we've encountered who have over 75 college credit hours, but have not yet earned an associate's degree. That's 25% of Americans have college credits, but not a certificate or a degree, right? And so the program actually creates 4 different on-ramps to where we can really meet people where they are in the program. And so the biggest component, I think, of a registered apprenticeship in the terms of Department of Labor is that it's high growth, high demand, high skill, high wage, and then in the end creates that family sustaining wage. And so like Mr. Massey shared, our paraprofessionals on average make about, let's just say $20,000. At the end of the program, their earning potential will be right at $60,000 once they graduate with their teaching certificate. And so, I think the biggest part about the apprenticeship program is understanding the barriers and helping solve those through, just like we have to nurture our students, right? So kind of focusing on our employees, focusing on their development, so we can support them, and as a partnership, remove those barriers to ensure that we can help them through the finish line.
Wow. Okay. So let me summarize, and you guys make sure that I have this down correctly. So in your apprenticeship program, you're partnering with both a community college in your area that will allow them to finish earning credits towards their bachelor's degree, while at the same time embedding them into your schools so that they're working with a veteran teacher who's helping coach them, just like you did for your university interns. And because you guys have partnered with the Department of Labor, and with your Texas Service Center, which is your accreditation instrument, you guys, with all of those relationships, you're being able to on-ramp those apprenticeships into full-fledged teaching positions. So what is your prediction in terms of someone who steps in? I know it's different depending on hours, et cetera, but on average, how long do you think it is going to normally take an apprentice to work in that role before they're stepping into a full-time teaching position?
So the model is really set up like what you're used to with a traditional model of university model. So it could take anybody from 1 to 4 years. So it just depends on where they are in their college journey. But with the 4 different on-ramps, the first on-ramp thinking in terms of 4 years, right? So very new into their college journey. With the second on-ramp focusing on individuals who are really close to earning their associate's degree. So they would have about a 3-year experience. And then, so on third, on-ramp 3 would have a 2-year experience. And then on-ramp 4 is where that residency experience is, so where they're partnered 100% of the time with that high quality mentor teacher. But throughout the entire process, so they're not only fulfilling, a paraprofessional role within the district, which provides, student supports, campus supports, teacher supports, they're actually also getting to experience on-the-job training in terms of micro-credentials. And so they're getting related instruction. They're having opportunities to demonstrate those skills in our classrooms and build their confidence. So throughout the apprenticeship program, before they enter into their residency, they're getting, really building their toolkit, if you will, and so that they have that experience moving in. And I like to share this is that, you think about a teacher who's just graduated college or just earned their certification, they're going into a classroom on day 1. Really what we're experiencing, our teachers work 187 days. So at the end of their residency opportunity, when they have their own classroom, it's like day 188, right? So that makes a big difference. And teacher confidence and, their abilities and their skill set and just how prepared they, and as an individual, feel. And their own development to support our students in their
I love that. And so, Danny, let me ask you, let's just talk nitty gritty about expenses and salaries, because I'm assuming that those apprentices, is that the plural? Those apprentices are being salaried as well. And of course, when they step into teaching, that salary is going to increase. So what does that look like for you guys in terms of a commitment from the district on average for embedding those apprentices into those kinds of programs?
I can jump in and share. So in terms of the apprenticeship, our focus is to look at attrition. So what paraprofessional roles are vacant, and how can we partner with our campus administrators to provide them, top talent to fill those paraprofessional roles. And mind you that while they're in the program, we're upskilling them. And so, their skills as they develop will positively impact their campus and student success as well. And so the opportunity to first look at internally and what vacancies do we have, what teacher vacancies do we have? Do I have a teacher vacancy where I might have a long-term sub or, some waiting for a certification? Do I have any available funding to support an extra position where I could have an apprentice?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, and the last piece is understanding. We had our overwhelming response to the program, and how was I going to place them all? And so, thinking in terms of, even the substitute shortage. So can we continue to upskill an apprentice and have a lot of their role as a campus support and floating throughout that campus to fill, teacher absences where a substitute wasn't available? And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, internal that you can look to find available funding to support that wage aspect of an apprenticeship program.
Wow, that's very exciting. Well, I want to continue down this same pathway with another question, and that's about your partnerships, because you talked a lot about the fact that this was something you did in collaboration with a number of bodies, the Department of Labor, your community colleges. So talk a little bit about those partnerships, and then also what suggestions would you have for other education leaders who are thinking about ways that they could expand their own programs for teacher retention and recruitment?
I think entering into the apprenticeship space, it was important for each of us to really understand the climate and the culture of, higher education for me as a district, understand the climate at a service center and an EPP, and kind of what are those opportunities and, or what are those sticking points, so we can understand the dynamics and then really agree to kind of what that common goal is. And of our partnership, really. And, one of the biggest highlights, I think, out of our partnership that has come, which is the greatest benefit to our apprentices, is the realization of our community college partners, them realizing the value that the educator prep program brings and the development of a teacher, and looking at that coursework that's required by the state, to meet the requirements, and reviewing that coursework and applying that to college credit hours. So they're crosswalking, the coursework that they already have to do for the certification, to apply that to their bachelor's degree. So it saves both time and money. And then we're having like 100% match on coursework requirements. And so, I think that realization is the greatest benefit. Can almost take away a year of college. They can get credit for the preparation to support their bachelor degree programs. And so that was something that we didn't know going into the space, but taking time to understand the value and the work that each partner does is how we landed in that opportunity. And like I shared, benefits the apprentices the most.
Well, it's beautiful. And what I love about it is that you guys are not waiting for solutions to come to you. As you know, educators across the U.S. have been, and I know in my state specifically, we've had a record number of emergency certifications, alternative certifications, where the states are trying to figure out ways to find degreed people to place them in classrooms, but then they're getting on the job training. And a lot of times they're trying to earn those credits outside of school hours, or they're trying to do additional prep time, or they're trying to meet those requirements so that they can find a standard certification at some point. But what you guys have done is you've figured out how to find the people already that are the best candidates in your district, how to embed them into the programs that you have available, how to partner with the closest education partnerships that can help them finish degrees and help them embed that training as a part of their workday. And you're paying them, which I think is just so wonderful, because you're not waiting for other people to find those solutions for you. You guys have begun to create pathways that are going to see, I think you're going to see ongoing teacher growth and recruitment from within. And as you said earlier, you had a very great response from your people in terms of people that were interested in this too. So it sounds like it's a program that in its first year has already been really popular among your own employees.
Yeah, well, we just started this 3 weeks ago. We had our onboarding session and a celebration with our apprentices, and our first we held an information. About a month ago, we had our first information session. We had about 170 people show up, which was incredible. We can't fill paraprofessional vacancies. We can't get applicants. And so we were really pleasantly surprised that we had so many people show up just for the informational session. And then we had approximately 150 people apply. And then we went through a selection process, and we ended up hiring 70 apprentices to start this year, just a few weeks ago. So Kristi can talk more about what the percentage of where those people are and which on-ramp they were, but almost 40% of them were current employees of ours. Wow. Too. And so I think that the other thing that's important to realize is that these people are willing to take the paraprofessional positions, long-term sub positions, substitute positions where they weren't before, because we're struggling to get them. But they see a clearly defined pathway for their advancement in their career.
Wow.
I can add and tag on to what Mr. Massey has shared. So yeah, we did extend 76 offers. We ended with right at 66 apprentices that started with the district. And we lost a few, but some because they are too far in their current programs, it didn't make sense. But when they get further, we're going to welcome them back into on-ramp 4, right? So we can still participate in their development. But one of the biggest things that we realized is 42, like Mr. Massey said, about 42% are current employees. So the opportunity to upskill employees who are already committed, who are embedded in your community, equity and access, obviously, you know, that's tying straight into that when you're looking internal to develop and the impact to their wages. I think the biggest part that that I love to celebrate is that 78% of our apprentices are actually seeking high need certification areas. I mean, we have 7 bilingual teachers who want to be bilingual teachers in our residency. So, I mean, that's amazing, right? That's difficult to find. But then even the emphasis, because we are a K-12 apprenticeship program, you know, the positive impact and ability to recruit into the apprenticeship program for secondary math, science, ELA. And then, you know, the demographics, you know, the candidates are also equally demographically diverse, with over 55% of them, you know, being, you know, demographically diverse in terms of, you know, race, ethnicity. And I have to add this in because in education, I think it's really important. But, you know, the number of males at our secondary level interest. And so, you know, it's just been really eye-opening. And I think the biggest part about it is that I shared this with Mr. Massey earlier. We have a problem that really others don't have, right? I mean, here we have 66 people that we get to develop to become a teacher. Some of them will be teachers next year, some the following, and some the after. So the program actually provides short-term and long-term, you know, initiative to support those hiring needs. But, you know, embedded in the district, and then that commitment and retention, I think, you know, will all follow as we've all invested in each other.
Well, and what I'm so impressed with too is just the comprehensive perspective that you guys have on that short term and that long term, because you mentioned this earlier, Danny, but traditionally in education, we've taught school, and then we get to the spring and we post openings, and then we do interviews throughout the late spring and the early summer. It's funny, this morning I was looking back at some content from my first book because I was getting ready to do some training early this morning, and I came across some notes that I had written down my first year as when I moved from assistant to principal. There had been a retirement in that building, and I had made a note that summer I had hired 12 teachers and 8 staff, all within just that spring, just within that tiny little spring summer. And when I look back at that time, I'm realizing why I was so tired, because that's a lot of people to hire in that tiny little window just for one building. And so you guys are thinking so far down the road with your ghost organizations, with your university interns, with your apprenticeships. And I want you to share a little bit of celebration, because you've also seen some really great outcomes as a result of your innovative approaches. So why don't you brag on a little bit what some of these things have been doing for your district, even before you started this apprenticeship program?
Yeah, we've made dramatic improvements in our student outcomes from our innovative, innovative payment structures also. Mm-hmm. And so we've had some really low performing campuses 6-7 years ago that are now very high performing campuses. We have a state accountability system in Texas like no other probably. And so we were rated an 89 this year, and we have 5 A campuses. And so, 6-7 years ago, we had F campuses. We were really underperforming in our district, and so we've really been able to turn our student achievement around, and especially in really high poverty areas too. That was where we were really struggling, and something that we're really proud of, because we couldn't get teachers. We couldn't get quality teachers in some of our higher poverty schools, and so coming up with some innovative ways to get better teachers. It's not rocket science. You get better teachers in the class, you're going to get better student performance. And so we had to, it wasn't how can we get students to perform higher? The question was, how can we get better teachers? And so we have a small campus in Freeport, Lanier Middle School, that was really underperforming. It was a F-rated campus for several years, and we paid a stipend, a $10,000 stipend for teachers to meet they had to meet a certain level of qualifications. We called it a master's level teacher. They had to have evidence of proven success with student outcomes, and especially in high poverty areas, economically disadvantaged students. And so our board committed to that. We had 10 $10,000 positions, stipends. And so we immediately got better teachers there because of the $10,000 stipends, and immediately our student performance increased. Our kids learned more because they had much better teachers.
I love that. And Danny, what I love too about your story is, and I'm just going to give you kudos for just a minute, 31 years serving in the same, 33 years as a career, 31 years serving in the same school district where you've served as a teacher, a coach, a principal, superintendent now, and you've had the opportunity to see the challenges that your district has faced, and then to be a part of the solutions for them too. I know a lot of leaders, including myself, that have served in various roles in a variety of places, but the fact that you've stayed in one's place and you've been able to watch that trajectory of growth. And I'm not saying this because Danny Massey's perfect, you know that I know you, but I am saying this because I do believe that your community has a lot to celebrate. And part of that is just the perspective that you have historically, as well as the perspective that you have for the future, and being able to look comprehensively across that landscape and see why it's so important. And this is where I want to wrap up this part. Why it's so important that we invest and commit to quality teachers for all students, because you and I both know that student outcomes are directly tied to the quality of this classroom instructor that kids have. And we also know that the quality of those instructors is directly tied to who their principal is as well. And you and I have shared, Danny, in other settings about how important it is to make sure those building leaders have that vision to equip their teachers. So I want to wrap up this part of the conversation. And Principal Matters listeners, we're going to do a part 2 in this conversation because there's more information I want to share with you from Danny Massey and from Kristi Kirschner as we wrap up this week. I just want to thank both of you for the work that you're doing at Brazosport ISD in Texas. Thank you for all the work that you're investing in with future teachers. And until next time, Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. Now, as we wrap up, I do want, in case this is the one time people have an opportunity to meet you two, how can they stay connected with you both? What by email or through your website, so that if they have questions, they can reach out to you directly. Kristi, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, definitely via email through our Brazosport ISD website, but Kristi.Kirschner at brazosportisd.net. We also are pretty active, our HR page on social media, on Facebook as well. So you can look our HR page up through Brazosport ISD Human Resources.
Great. And Danny, how can listeners stay connected with you?
Yeah, email dmassey at brazosportisd.net. And you can also get my email on our website, brazosportisd.net, or message me through Twitter.
There you go. Well, Principal Matters listeners, I know you are probably already thinking about possible things you could be doing, ideas that you can have. And if you're like me, you're going to want to reach out to these great education leaders and find out more. So until next time, thanks for doing what matters. We'll talk to you next week. You can find free resources like this one at my website at williamdparker.com.